Start with a quick reminder of the question this morning that we'd like to interact with you. The hashtag is KTN Morning Express, or you can also tweet, and the Twitter handles are at KTN News, or rather KTN Kenya, or you can also tweet us directly, and that's at Michael G. Gitonga or at tricks.l. Do you think the constitutional referendum is a priority for the country at the moment? Do you think the constitutional referendum is a priority for the country? This, of course, is as a result of what has been discussed severally and in several political gatherings and other gatherings in regards to a new constitutional review that needs to be done. We do know that the former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga is on record as mentioning that Kenyans should brace themselves for a new political change and a new wave. But the question is also whether what we need is a constitutional review and referendum at this point in time, or are there other things that we need to look at before we can look at that? Well, to look at some of the answers that have come through or some of your comments in regards to that question, let me just see if I can sample a few and I'll continue reading them through as we carry on. We have Kamari who says we have more pressing priorities such as addressing famine, hunger, rampant unemployment, declining economic growth, and endemic corruption. We also have somebody else who says that the constitutional review is purely to serve a few in this country. We need to think about the electorate and not just the leaders. What are your thoughts? Keep your answers and your comments coming as we carry on. Now, a quick reintroduction of the guests that we have in studio. I'm joined by Honorable Elisha Odhiambo, who is a Member of Parliament for GEM. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Honorable Charles Nguna, who is a Member of Parliament for Mwingi. And last but not least, we are joined by Ishmael Nyaribo, who is a constitutional lawyer. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. And we begin by, first of all, just understanding first, and I'll start with you, Ishmael, on the question. Well, before we even get to whether we need the constitutional review, part of what is being suggested is having a parliamentary system as opposed to what we have currently, which is a presidential system. So maybe in simple terms, help us understand the difference between the presidential and the parliamentary, as that is what would give us an expanded executive, should we go the parliamentary way.
Basically, just for simple understanding, powers of this country as it is now, in practical terms, not in accordance with the Constitution, is actually vested on the President. The President makes all decisions and basically, makes us to follow whatever the President has made a decision that should be done. In a parliamentary system, you realize that the President has no power actually to make certain decisions or appointments without consultation from Parliament.
Okay. And Parliament, there would be a leader of government with a parliamentary system who is not necessarily the President.
And who is also not answerable per se to the President.
Okay. And this would be the Prime Minister in some jurisdictions, and Kenyan would be one of those, looking that we're borrowing maybe from the British.
That's where we are going now.
That's where we're headed.
Yes.
All right. I'll come to you, Honorable Nguna. Your thoughts on whether Kenya really needs a parliamentary or the presidential system just needs to be tweaked a little bit for it to work for us.
I think so. I think the move should be really embraced by every Kenyan, moving to parliamentary system.
Parliamentary system.
First of all, it's going to curb the issues of corruption, because nobody will have a monopoly of decision making.
How will that help corruption? Because we already have institutions in place, we already have laws in place that are to deal with corruption, but that doesn't seem to really help us much.
Those things, when you talk of ESCC, those bodies are being compromised by people. If somebody is corrupt and is very powerful in a presidential system, he is bound to manipulate the decision making for the bodies. But moving to parliamentary system, everybody will be answerable. Our opposition leader will be there to check the balances of the president, to check the balances of the government. So that's why I'm arguing that we will have fair distribution of resources, and as well as the issues of corruption, issues we are experiencing at the moment will be dealt with when we move to parliamentary system.
All right, Honorable
Yes.
Nyambu, your opening remarks on whether we should go parliamentary or is presidential working or is able to work for us if we put the right things in place?
I think, like Wakilia said, in a presidential system which we have now, there's absolute power that is controlled by the president. In a parliamentary system, we'll have power distributed. And if you remember, when Kibaki and Raila worked together, this country was growing faster than it has grown now.
Well, that is subjective because there was also the question of how much wrangles there were. There was the question of whether the Prime Minister has approved, whether the President has agreed. Those were still issues that were not quite sorted out at that time. So one might argue that maybe it didn't work out that well.
Yes, one might have that argument, but from where I sit, I think to achieve national cohesion and unity in this country, we need to distribute power at the top, so that all ethnic groups in the republic would feel a level of inclusivity in government. And they would also feel that the resources of the country are being distributed because their representation, they can feel the representation at the top. Yeah.
All right, I'll come to you, Bwana Wakili, Mr. Nyaribo. And if we were to go the referendum way, what things do we need to have in place? Again, looking at the parliamentary versus the presidential, governance system, the parliamentary would require us to have very strong political parties, which in Kenya, that is arguable, whether we have actually strong political parties.
Yeah, you've asked me to comment about the which really, if you look at this constitution, it's actually a very good document. I mean, I have it right here. It's a very good document. The problem is for the leadership. Whether it's, the legislature, whether you talk about the judiciary, you talk about parliament, and we shall come back to, I would want to comment and say even parliament is actually possible to influence. But I think the bone of contention here is chapter, 10, 9, where issue of representation. How we want to govern resources, people, and our affairs. Should we vest that in many people or in a small group of people? Should we leave that to the president? And as the Honorable MP said, Elisha, actually when Raila shook hands with Uhuru, you can see that there is now less tension. There is tension, of course. We are human beings, but there's less tension. When Kibaki worked with Raila, again, there was less tension. Of course, there were murmurs, but there was less tension. So I think what this is showing is that the issue of referendum cannot be wished away. We need to go into the referendum and look at how our resources are managed. Now, we have an issue where SGR has come from Mombasa and it's terminating in Naivasha. What happens with the people in Busia, Kisumu, and Migori, and Kakamega? What happens with the rest of the country? And yet, they are being taxed to service the comfort of the people of between Mombasa and Naivasha. So really, I think there are issues like management of finance, and who should go to office, leave alone having the EACC. Who should be qualified to run for office? So those things are not very clear here. What should happen with corruption matters where you are a leader, you are a governor, you are a senator, you are a member of parliament, you are whoever, and then you have been accused with 70% appearance of culpability, and you're still going to be in office and you're still going to be the one dictating and directing what happens. So I think there are several issues, but in terms of if you look at the Constitution, the Republic, sovereignty, Bill of Rights, we all have that. But the parts we want to amend in the Constitution really are those which are dealing with leadership and what we do with our public resources and such like.
All right, and I think there's general agreement by quite a good number of Kenyans that there needs to be the Constitution looked into. But there's also the question of priority and whether we are ready for that as a country. I don't want us to listen in to some of the leaders and what they've had to say, because there are those who feel that the constitutional amendment now is purely to serve a few. Now, Deputy President William Ruto says Kenyans are not ready for constitutional reforms that favors politicians to get power and positions in government. In a veiled response to the opposition leader Raila Odinga, who asked Kenyans to prepare for a major political transformation in the next few months on the impending referendum once Building Bridges Initiative team hands its report to President Uhuru Kenyatta and himself. The Deputy President said any constitutional changes should be beneficial to Kenyans and not the political class.
On Friday, during the homecoming party of Nyatike MP Tom Odega in Migori County, opposition leader Raila Odinga said the change of the constitution was inevitable and asked Kenyans to brace for radical political changes.
At the end of this process that we started with Uhuru Kenyatta, there's going to be a new Kenya.
And in a quick rejoinder, Deputy President William Ruto, who was in Lokichar, Turkana County, fired a scorching salvo at Raila.
Hiyo mabadiliko yenu mnaongelea ati mabadiliko ya maisha ya viongozi na vyeo na viti na hiyo mambo ingine, tunataka tuwaambie Kenya hii sio ya wanasiasa peke yake. Kenya hii ni ya Wakenya milioni 45.
Sisi tuko mahali mlituacha. Wale wageni wamekuja, wale wamesalimiwa kwa faranda, hiyo ni faranda. Maneno ya faranda, sisi najua maana ya bedroom ya Jubilee. Tuko bedroom, tuko sitting room. Maneno ya faranda ni kumaliza kelele. Lakini makelele hiyo isifike kwa bedroom, kwa sababu bedroom ni siri, maneno inapanga huko, hatutaki kelele.
Wenye wanaleta hiyo katiba, tunaongoja maswali ile wanaleta. Tunasikia tu serikali itoke hapa iende Nakuru. MCA atoke hapa aende ofisi yake ni wapi? Nakuru ama Eldoret. Loperito akitoka aende Eldoret, saa ngapi atakuja kuona wewe hapa?
Ruto said Kenyans are not interested in those pushing the referendum for political glory.
Ile mabadiliko wananchi wanangojea ni mabadiliko ya maisha yao.
Sisi tunakula maendeleo. Watu wa Turkana wanahitaji masomo. Watu wa Turkana wanahitaji hospitali. Watu wa Turkana wanahitaji maji.
Mimi sitaki katiba ibadilishwe ndio niendelee. Sitaki. Kwani mimi peke yangu ndio nimezaliwa kuwa governor ya Turkana?
At his Opoda home in Bondo, Siaya County, Raila held talks with a visiting delegation of politicians, mainly composed of members of the Kikuyu community residing in Nakuru County, that was led by former Molo MP Njenga Mungai, that included former Eldama Ravine MP Musa Sirma. Raila said he has not asked for a seat in government following his handshake with President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Hatujasema ati nataka hii au hii. Uhuru amesema, hajasema yeye anataka tena aendelee mbele. Raila hajasema anataka kwenda kuonea kiti ya urais tena. Sijasema.
Leaders present supported the referendum.
Wakati wa kubadilisha katiba na kuangalia zile weaknesses imefika.
So, Honorable Odhiambo, the Orange Democratic Movement leader, Raila Odinga, says this is going to give us a new Kenya. What magic is, having a parliamentary or having an expanded executive going to perform that has not happened before?
I think more importantly, we need to appreciate the country has gone through a lot of violence every time we have an election. We need to get a panacea for the violence. And I see that the solution to ensure that Kenyans don't go on electoral violence again would be for Kenyans to believe that this system of government that will be brought by referendum will guarantee them inclusivity in government, will guarantee a more accountable executive, because we'll have ministers drawn from parliament. It will guarantee a more cost-effective and efficient way of managing government. You will not have a situation where a minister can sit down and form a board with only people from his ethnic community.
Okay, and maybe you've alluded to inclusivity as one of the benefits that we'd have from this. When we talk about inclusivity, what do you envisage as inclusivity? And I'll ask you, Honorable Charles Nguna, what is inclusivity? Because there are those who feel inclusivity maybe means that you have one of your people
Yes.
at the national table where you divide this national cake.
I'll give you an example. Last elections, Raila got almost 80 million votes. Uhuru Kenyatta the same tally. And when you're asking yourself, all these people elected the leader of opposition, who is going to represent
But
them?
when a leader is elected, he's not elected to serve just the people who elected him. He's elected to serve every Kenyan.
Yes.
Isn't that what democracy is all about?
It is, but still, we need for us to solve these issues of clashing every time, violence, electoral violence every time, each and every day. If we give the leader of opposition to answer the issues, or rather to put government into checks and balances on the floor of the parliament, I think it will work much better and it will serve Kenyans much better than it is at the moment. Issues of inclusivity to ensure that most of the time you've seen that resource distribution in most of the parts of these countries are always taken to places where the president and the vice president is coming from.
Mm-hmm. Although as per the constitution, we already have revenue allocation taken care of, and therefore, if they're doing that, it is illegal. It is not. It's not the constitution that has that. It is an illegal way of doing it. If that is what is happening.
I know we will argue about the counties taking revenue, which is just 25% of our budget. But when it comes to issues of other 75% of allocation, it is not being fairly distributed across the country. Mm-hmm. And I think moving to presidential system and having everybody included in the government, or rather in the running affairs of our country, we are going to have resource distribution. And also, it will minimize these issues of corruption.
Okay.
And I know you'll keep on asking how, but I know it will work.
And the how is what is missing. Bwana Nyaribo, inclusivity. What is inclusivity? Legally speaking, from the Constitution, what is inclusivity?
Well, really, this is really about people participation. I mean, we have regions and we have counties today. In strict interpretation of what the rules are saying is each and every part of Kenya, in one way or the other, should be represented in any public decisions being made, whether in leadership, governance, or in resource sharing. All people should be represented. And by the way, the Constitution is already asserted itself on those issues. I just wanted to mention to you, Getonga, that the problem really today is not purely on the Constitution, but it's people management and people's desires and appetite for growth, which is completely surpassing what the rules and the Constitution is saying. Now, this is where the problem is. We've never heard a person who has the guts to actually speak bad and openly denounce a fellow leader. We only go and say this in the funerals and all over. But when we meet face to face, you will realize people will say, oh, William Ruto, corruption there, corruption here. But they've never sat him down and tell him this is what we do not want, one-on-one. So the problem is really also our people, our leaders. And I think it's just a problem in Kenya. We are not able to tell someone, my pastor told me if somebody offends you, go to him and tell him, this is wrong. Not this media, they will be saying in Turkana and another one in Mombasa, and you're really talking to the people. If you look at what the Honorable Deputy President is saying today in what we have seen here in Turkana, I mean, that is correct, 100%. He's not wrong. He's saying Constitution should not be amended just to
serve a few people.
The same thing the Honorable former Prime Minister has said, we actually want a new Kenya. These two statements are correct. But now what is the intention? And how are we going to implement this? It's all about our people. I don't think we are ready to face realities.
Good thing is that we have legislators here. I'll come to you, Honorable Dhiambo. Your thoughts on what do you all discuss when you meet face to face? Because you have the political forums that, politicians will say whatever they have to say and galvanize people in certain areas. But when it's face to face, it seems like maybe what Wakili is saying is true. You actually don't address the issues that matter.
I think when we meet, we're open to each other. But even if you have divergent opinion, does not mean you hate each other. But for me, from where I sit, and this is my clarion call, as a leader, you need to be in a discomfort zone. You need to sacrifice so that other people can be comfortable. How I pray that this country, the leadership at the top, and everybody else, including myself, can sacrifice for the ordinary Kenya who is angry to have something, so that the Kenyans can have a new national consciousness, new nationhood, so that we can grow ethnic cohesion and national unity.
Well, you speak well, and when you say sacrifice, what exactly do you mean? Are you willing to sacrifice, say, for instance, your salary so that it can be used? Or when you talk about sacrifice, what exactly are you?
As we talk Tonga now, I have about 100 students that I don't use CDF to pay their fees. I pay for my own resources. Those are the sacrifices. If every other person could do that, how many Kenyans would be happier?
But Mheshimiwa, as a legislator, that is, and we commend you for that, doing that sacrifice. But what would be a lasting sacrifice for you is to ensure that there are systems in place so that the next member of parliament that comes in does not have to cough out of their pockets, but there is a system that takes care of that 100 people who need bursaries.
I think from that can be better said than done. From where I sit, I think the population is growing. The needs of the country are growing, and the resources are not enough. So whether we have processes in place, whether we have legislation in place that help us, you still have situations where we have few people who have to sacrifice for others to be happy.
Okay, let's maybe go back to just the discussion. I'll come to you, Honorable Nguna. The question now being, is it a priority for Kenya now to have this constitution reviewed, given the issues that we have? Somebody here has mentioned that we are facing drought. We have Kenyans, who are jobless. Looking at the mental state of Kenyans, we are worried because so many people are killing their children and killing themselves. We have issues. Is the amendment to the constitution a priority right now?
Looking at the status of our country at the moment and the economy, Ms. Ngitonga, I would like to say that our priority is fixing the economy first, sorting issues of food security first. If at all we don't have basic rights, or rather basic needs, which are required by the community, what are we fixing?
So is it a priority?
Our priority at the moment, we are experiencing drought. We need to sort out issues of food security first.
So do you think it's a priority for us to go into the constitution?
I am advocating for referendum, but still, this is not the right time. Let us have IEBC actually in place. The body is not, actually it's in tattered situation at the moment. We don't have a properly constituted IEBC, number one, to carry out the exercise. Number two, we don't have sufficient funds. Actually, we need 12 billion to do this exercise in the country. And still, our people are starving. Who are these people who are going to vote if they are starving, even they can't move where they are?
Okay, so in short, what you're saying, it's not a priority right now?
It is not a priority, but I'm advocating for the changes. At the moment, let us invest this money this year to curb the issues of food shortage and water.
Okay,
first.
Let me come to you, Bwana Wakili. Is there ever a right time to have a referendum like this? Because it is definitely expensive. And one might argue that as much as we have those issues that have been highlighted, like drought, some of the reviews would have on the constitution would help us actually deal with that when resources are managed well.
Gitonga, I have seen a saying that says that if a little baby is not silent, you cannot be silent. If a baby is crying, you cannot sleep. I think it is true that, the referendum will cost us some money, but what is 12 billion when you look at 300 billion that is used to build a quarter of the country's railways line, you know. So I think it is not so much to spend some money to do a referendum. But you've asked me a question directly. Is there a right time when you know the country should go and now conduct the referendum? There is a very mysterious thing around the former Prime Minister, generally in his life. You see, we are only discussing, and he has only, you know, thrown the spanner into the works. He's only saying we will have a new Kenya. He has not said we must have a referendum in 2019. So this is a time for discussions. And definitely, Getonga, we have been in this country for some time. Every time the former Prime Minister predicts something, it actually comes to pass. So we will do a referendum, I believe. The issue will be whether we will do in 2020 or 2021. I am sure it is not now. And will we get enough funding by 2021? This is a possibility because he is also a person, together with the president and other leaders of the country, these are people who are listened to. If the only issue will be the budget, that budget will be provided either from the partners or local, you know, sourcing. There will be money to boost the referendum. But when that will be, even I've not thought about it, Getonga, because no one has said it is now, today, or next year. So that is another subject altogether. We might have it next year or a year after next year.
Okay, and maybe from your legal eye and your legal perspective, if we were to put it in terms of priority, is that a priority now? And the scale here being, looking at, for instance, IEBC, which has been a major bone of contention every election, would probably be the one to oversee even a referendum. Are they even in place? Are they even ready to?
I want to answer that, Getoga, even before you finish. Look at IEBC. IEBC is a constitutional body. And they had several commissioners. IEBC was working until the commissioners refused to work. Others either resigned or others were bought by their political masters. So it is, the office itself is not bad. This is why I'm saying it's about the people. You don't want to work because you're seeing other things apart from work. I'm sorry, but let me say, you can see working ministers. They work under the Constitution and they work anyway. Even when circumstances are not favorable, they are getting threats or rather influences from all quarters, they are still working. So what will happen if we have a better constitution to people like this? They will actually go overboard and work and serve the nation. So yes, what will we do with the IEBC? What generally the Prime Minister wants and what we all want is an IEBC that has the face of Kenya. That is all. But the face of Kenya is not guaranteed that somebody will not give you a call and tell you, this is what I want. So it's really about our morals and our, principles.
So the issue we're dealing here with, if I can cut you short, is not per se the Constitution, but the people given the mandate to ensure they enforce the Constitution.
Correct. Now, I think what now we are looking at is to put in certain rules that are more, strictures that are more like, they move you. The systems move you from A to B, and you don't have much leverage or leeway to give your own thoughts in terms of, I can bend a rule here or I can do something else. So I think that is the element. Look at the Bill of Rights. You cannot mistreat or harass people. But we are harassed every other day. So I think the intention here is to cap, to put certain limits, which if a person goes, beyond, and then at least we either can take him to court immediately ourselves, or go the Nigerian way of, I have seen now they have started beating people.
Honorable Odhiambo, how do we deal with this heart of man? Because at the end of the day, I think it is agreed that our constitution is not all bad. There are just a few places that need to be amended. However, because of the leadership that we have, because of the political, temperatures that we've had in this country, the constitution implementation still remains a challenge. How do we deal with that? Will the parliamentary system help us?
I think, like I said before, that it's important to review the Constitution. You remember this Constitution was promulgated in 2010. 9 years later is a good time now to relook at it. The decisions that we made in 2010, can they still stand the test of time? And more importantly, Gitonga, if you remember, in 2010, during the referendum, the Honorable Deputy President was in Banana Camp, and the Honorable His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was with Raila Amolo Odinga on the Orange, and they supported the Constitution. And even William Samoei Ruto said that there's things that we need to correct. Why is he not seeing or looking back at history and looking at what he said in 2010? Does he think about it? Why can't he take some time like the president and take a break out of the public life and think through? Because this is what we all need to do. And I maintain to achieve a level of inclusivity, to achieve ethnic cohesion and national unity, and to have a more effective and robust government, and to rebuild a new national consciousness and nationhood.
Okay, but like Wakili said, he does have a point that the constitution should not be amended for the sake of a few. Could there be a possibility that there are some who are pushing for the constitutional review to have an expanded executive? And that's why I come back to the question, how does that resolve our problem as Kenyans? Because our key question is leadership. With the current constitution that we have not been able to enforce it effectively. And this is purely lying on the heads of the leadership that we have.
I don't think it's right that we should review the constitution to distribute leadership. But I think it begs the point, what are we trying to solve by the referendum? We have looked at our historical, the recurrent post-election violence that occurs every time we have an election. Why does it occur? It's because some people feel they're not included in the government. They don't think that they're represented well. So from where I sit, I think we need to look at the constitution afresh with the legal experts, including my brother here, and ensure that all the things that we want, we create avenues within the legislation as leaders, so that we have a situation where we can remove a leader if he doesn't meet the requirements, if he doesn't stand up for Kenya. Yes.
All right.
He's mentioning about people representation again. Just after the elections, you remember the Prime Minister encouraged Bunge la Wananchi, where really you are not appointed, but you're forming a group to give your ideas to whichever channel and then make sure your aspirations are addressed. Look, we have many PhDs and master's students in this country, not students, graduated, and hard-working Kenyans. They are not earning 50,000 per month. This is where the pain is, that even hard-working Kenyans cannot access resources because a few people sitting in Nairobi have decided this office person will earn 2 million shillings per month. And they have forgotten completely then what happens with the hard-working Kenyans. So I think if we have a system where it is form of like Bunge la Wananchi, and they can always say, hey, look, here in Nyamira we are completely forgotten. And there is a system for those people to be heard. So that now these learned men and women in the country who have parents have spent huge sums of money to educate them, we can have an assurance like in the Western countries where you're given, coupons because you don't have anything to eat and you really, really honestly need to eat. So I'm not suggesting that educated people should be given coupons, but what I'm saying, a system like this should be in place. You've graduated, you're a hardworking Kenyan, you're not the type of, like those people who don't want to eat even when they have food or they have means and abilities to eat. So these inequalities, and I have seen here, we have an equality commission. Human Rights and Equality Commission, and it's in the Constitution. That's why I still go back to our people. It is we who are lazy or not ready to face fellow leaders and say, we must work and we must have equality.
All right, let me come to you, Honorable Nguna. You mentioned and said that it may, according to you, it's not a priority. What solutions would you say we need in the interim, in the short term, so that with time, then we can resolve? But what are the solutions that you would suggest in the short term?
At the moment, we need, first of all, to fix the issue of revenue collection. I think you saw recently what is happening at KRA. We need to fix the issues of investing our money wisely, like issues to deal with the big four agenda. Actually, we've not even achieved anything so far, and we are talking of midway of the term. We are in the midway of the term for President Uhuru Kenyatta. So we need to come up with issues of sorting water shortages in our country. You've seen water rationing. That one is going to address the food security issues.
So
we need to reduce the cost of energy.
Those are issues that need to be dealt with, that's true.
Yes.
But in terms of governance, what needs to be done now for us to have those? Because if we have the right leaders, some of those things will almost automatically be taken care of. But in terms of governance, in terms of the referendum, in terms of where we are as a country, so much pilferage and losing resources, yet we have so many Kenyans who are unemployed. We have starvation. What needs to be done? And this rests on the shoulders of governance, starting with yourselves as legislators.
As legislators, I think we have done our role, and by ensuring...
So you're satisfied with what you have done as members of parliament?
We are very satisfied with what we have delivered. What we need is to fix the issues, the challenges of corruption. Mr. Gitoga, you've seen the wastages we are experiencing as a country. You've seen the wastage of overfunding a project beyond the normal costs.
How are you as a member of parliament satisfied when we have Kenyans in Baringo and Turkana dying out of hunger? How are you as a member of parliament satisfied when we have so much pilferage going on? Don't you feel a sense of responsibility as a legislator that something needs to be done?
You know, the issue of implementation, we have got plenty of food in stores. So our people are suffering because of the issue of implementation. Our minister has got enough food in the store, in the cereals, yet he is not distributing that food timely and at the right place where the food is needed. That is why I'm telling you, the legislators have done their role. We have made noise. We have ensured everything is in place for the executive to implement. But at the moment, things are not moving at the right way.
Right. Honorable Dhiambo, are you also satisfied?
No, I think we have made a contribution, but there's a sense of betrayal. Or if you talk to an ordinary Kenyan in the street, if you meet a Kenyan in the street, they are very angry with us as leaders. So we need to rethink, we need to think what we need to do so that the Kenyans can feel that the leadership is doing what they were elected for. And more importantly, you need to do, if you do a huge project, you need to correlate the resources and the project. Sometimes the resources are more than the project. The financing is huge compared to the project. So Kenyans who are not eating, who didn't have food last night, when they see the issue of our road dam, they're mad at the leadership. And what would be important as parliament is to ensure that we control, we put more prudent measures to control the purse, so that we don't allow the executive to borrow carelessly. We must control what they borrow, because even if you borrow, which any country will do, it is important that this country goes for long-term loans, not short-term loans. Short-term loans are expensive for the country. So we need to relook at our borrowing system.
Okay.
Yeah, and our investment priorities.
We'll need to wind up, and your closing comments is what I'm looking at, but I'll put it this way, and I'll start with you, Bwana Wakili. What do we stand to gain with the referendum? Or what do we stand to lose should we not have the referendum?
Mr. Kitonga, I believe that we should all agree that we need local solutions for our local problems.
Correct.
This constitution might have been influenced by, too much I don't want to say foreign notions, but too much international issues. If you look at Kajiado area, people are building normal dams. They dig normal dams, put polythene paper and store water. We need local solutions other than thinking of building a dam for 80 billion and first of all eating 20 billion. So our constitution is correct, it's not bad. But so that we go into the referendum, we must see which are the areas we need to deal with in terms of managing our finances, in terms of making sure that every Kenyan feels is participating in building the economy and also, harvesting or rather getting back his hard work. So that everyone will feel that it's important we only do the referendum. And now this takes us to the question. The question is simple in a referendum. You'll be asking, do you think we should amend our laws to allow for inclusivity. And then people have to say yes or no.
Oh, no.
So I think we should agree that a referendum debate is timely, and no one has said when it will be done, but at whatever time it will be brought on board, we should remember that we really need to deal with those thorny issues and not everything in the constitution.
Right, Honorable Gunda, what do we stand to gain or lose should we have the referendum?
We are not going to lose at all if we are going to have referendum. I've told you many advantages of actually having referendum. The only thing we have is the issue of managing it. Do we have the resources at the moment? Are we going to fix the needs which are priorities to our country? And if we do so, if we have money to do referendum, I'm very okay with it, because I know the advantages we are going to have. Actually, the benefit outweighs the cost, actually. And that is why we need to move and question ourselves. Where are we going to get this money from?
All right. Honorable Odhiambo, your closing remarks?
As a country and as a leadership, we need to give our children and our grandchildren a heritage to remember. And the only heritage we want them to remember is that we build a more united Kenya by promoting ethnic cohesion and national unity, so that the country can stand strong in our absence.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have to wind it up right there. That's Honorable Elisha Odhiambo, GEM Member of Parliament. We also have Honorable Charles Nguna, Member of Parliament for Mwingi, and last but not least, Ishmael Nyaribo, our Constitution